Living in Singapore is often portrayed as a dream come true, a clean, efficient city with world-class infrastructure, safety, and a booming economy. But behind the glitz and glamour, many find the reality much tougher than expected. From the soaring cost of living and small, cramped spaces to relentless work pressure, strict regulations, and a hot, humid climate, Singapore can present a unique set of challenges. In this video, we're diving into the reasons why, for some, living in Singapore can feel nearly impossible. Stay tuned as we uncover the other side of life in the Lion City. Number 1. Costly rent. So, while Singapore has one of the best standards of living in the world, it certainly comes with a hefty price tag. Singapore is one of the most expensive countries in the world and the most expensive city to live in, which means there is no such thing as cheap rent here. While big houses are available for rent, which is a pro, the con is that the prices are extraordinary. A 3-bedroom private apartment in the center of Singapore will cost between $5,000, $7,000, while the same on the city's outskirts can cost $4,000 monthly. If you're searching for a condo with more facilities, you will need an even higher budget of $7,000, $15,000 depending on how luxurious it is and which location you prefer. One thing is sure, living in Singapore is expensive no matter what, and you need to come to terms with this if planning your escape to Southeast Asia. Number 2. Rain and humidity. Singapore is situated near the equator, which means it has a tropical climate, which might sound very exotic. While the summers can be glorious and sunny, one of the disadvantages of living in Singapore is that you will have to deal with the climate at its most uncomfortable, which means high humidity and monsoon rains. Singapore's climate features 2 monsoon seasons, one from December to early March, and the southwest monsoon from June to September. With this comes unpredictable and heavy rainfall, humidity, which can reach 90% at times, and let's not forget the thunderstorms and prevailing winds. Of course, this can all be dealt with if you know what's coming and are prepared for each season, but for those imagining Singapore to be sunny and exotic all year long, you might want to reconsider. Number 3. Closed people. Don't get me wrong, Singaporeans. Welcome people willing to help in a time of need, which is excellent if you visit. However, if you plan on living in Singapore, you might notice the people are not as warm as other countries such as Ireland, New Zealand, or Mexico. In fact, they can come off as cold at times and hard to get to know. Singaporeans have a strong tradition of helping each other and having a friendly attitude towards foreigners, but when it comes to a level of friendliness you might be used to from home, Singapore will not match up. It can be difficult for people to build relationships, friendships, and even feel like they belong in a country, so it is worth knowing this aspect of the culture before making a move. Number 4. Strict laws. Yes, Singapore is considered a safe country, but we need to consider the strict laws in place to make it so safe. Singapore does not just have laws based on criminal offenses like most other countries. The country goes as far as to restrict and regulate many parts of daily life, such as banning chewing gum and implementing strict rules for littering and jaywalking. Vandalism and smoking in public are just 2 rules that can land you a fine, or, worse still, in prison. International visitors and locals are subject to random drug tests at the international airport, which, if found, can lead to the death penalty. While having rules in place is critical for order in the community and overall safety, Singapore goes a little too far with its rules, including not being allowed to walk naked around your house, no eating on public transport, and no drinking after 10:30 p.m. Number 5. High costs of education and healthcare. We have already established that Singapore is one of the world's most expensive countries, but let's delve deeper into the cost of healthcare and education, 2 of the main aspects of life. Without insurance, foreigners may find themselves paying hefty prices for medical care, and while it is one of the best healthcare systems in the world, it is worth knowing that it is not cheap. The cost of healthcare in Singapore has risen by 53.6% since 2002 and is still on the rise. Of course, coming from a country like the United States, expats may find the costs lower for certain surgeries. Still, overall, Singapore is not considered an affordable country for healthcare. Education, on the other hand, is just as astronomical, and schools can be pretty hard to get into in the first place. Number 6, roads are unsafe for pedestrians and cyclists. It works if they do this to encourage the use of their excellent public transport system. Pedestrians and cyclists need to be very brave to walk or cycle on the streets in Singapore, especially since pedestrians do not have the right of way in Singapore. There is minimal cycling infrastructure in the city, and when walking, it is best to stick to crosswalks and be aware of your surroundings when exploring on foot. Most traffic doesn't look out for pedestrians or cyclists, and generally, both share the same lane, so it can be very unsafe, and it might be wiser to stick to the buses or metro. Singapore authorities are doing what they can to make this side of things more accessible and safer, but who knows when this will happen. Number 7, the size. Yes, the size of the country can have some advantages, since distances are not that big, but it also has many disadvantages. Living in a country this small can sometimes feel very limited, especially if you want a change of scenery. There are few places to venture to within the country without going over the borders. The size also has negative impacts on the living space within the city, and large families might find it difficult to find big properties that are at all affordable or even available for that matter. If you want to live in the central area of Singapore City, do not expect to live in a big apartment. Space is limited, so you may have to make do with whatever sized apartment you can find. Number 8, no work-life balance. While the abundance of jobs and the high salaries make a living in Singapore appealing to many expats, you must know that the work-life balance is very much off, like in many parts of Asia. Being as productive as Singapore is, it is no surprise that people work hard, with 7/10 people reporting overwhelming workloads. In addition, with the rising living costs and the vast workloads, stress levels are soaring, and residents in Singapore have some of the highest compared to the global average. 86% of people claimed they are stressed, and 15% admitted they struggle to cope with the stresses of work and life in Singapore.